All right, what I'm reading now is Anarchy and Christianity by my man Jacques Ellul, who's since passed. But I found this book after reading John Waters, Give Us Back Our Bad Roots. He talks a lot about Jacques, and I call him on a first name basis, because he had written a lot of stuff on propaganda, on technology, how it's used to control individuals, and just incredible. Anyway, so I was looking at his list of stuff, and this one jumped out at me: Anarchy and Christianity. And it's interesting too, because I think as Christians, we hear the word anarchy and we think Stalin. You know what I'm saying? We think Marx, antithesis to Christianity. And then on the other side, I think anarchists hear the word Christianity and they think, the Catholic Church mandating and government by theology. And I know I had. And I'll give you a story. I'll never forget when I was in college at George Mason in 1995. A guy named Mario Rizzo, a PhD in economics from New York University, came down to George Mason to give a speech, and I remember going there. But the minute he said he described himself as an anarchist, I remember I said my mind changed immediately to looking for things to agree with to looking for things to disagree with. Just because he used the term anarchist. And anarchism for me meant that he was a communist, you see what I'm saying, who wanted to control me by the power of a gun. I said, how can anyone who holds himself to be in freedom and individual liberty hold himself to be an anarchist? And I guarantee the same thing happens on anarchists with Christianity. They say, how can anyone who claims to be free, liberated, throw in with Catholicism, Protestantism, Christianity, which seeks, command and control. And anyway, so it took me a while, but I started realizing more and more as I got older, and now I just turned 50, that I think there's some stuff from the anarchist thought process that has been co-opted by the left wing, and some stuff by the Christian thought process has been co-opted by, a nanny state. There's no ways around that. And I think if we can open up our minds to hear a little bit more, we might be well served in terms of at least, reaching just well served to understand the other side and to be better in advancing a cause of freedom for liberation, from the tyrants of government. Anarchists don't want the tyrants of government. The Christians should not. I mean, for heaven's sake, haven't you look at your own faith, our own faith? Anyway, so I was reading this. I said, oh man, this guy's talking right up. So I want to share with you a couple things, and this is from Nietzsche. And it's just interesting to me as all get out, like how much I've just discounted, Marx, Engels, Nietzsche, and I'm not a scholar on these guys. I'm not. I'll tell you that right now. Will I ever read Das Kapital by Karl Marx? Probably not, frankly. But you take some tidbits, like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. I didn't realize that guy would have said that. So here's Nietzsche. And I'm probably butchering his name. I don't know. I don't speak. Is that German? Is that Nietzsche? Nietzsche's description of the state is he describes the state as the coldest of all cold monsters. The coldest of all cold monsters. I tell you what. Um, my man Jacques, he talks about he protested against the fiery cross in 1934, which was the France somewhat fascistic movement, but not really. But it kind of sort of is corporatist, a big state with big corporations, fascism for sure. They didn't really throw in Mussolini and stuff like that, but I guess some and after action reviewers say, oh, that was leading to the rise of the pro-fascist parties on the right, which had to deal with the pro-commie parties on the left. It's just actually interesting when you go back to hear the 20s and the 30s, you realize what we're dealing with now is a similar scenario there for sure. Just nothing on the right has shown up yet, but it will if we keep going down this road, and it's going to get ugly, man, if we don't nip this in the bud. All right, so anyway, let's keep reading. Though I like the analysis of Marx, including his vision of society in which the state would have withered away. See, that's what I'm saying. The state would have withered away. The communists don't want the state to wither away. The communists want the state to be your mother, dad, God, everything, your boss. My contacts with communists were poor. They viewed me as a little bourgeois intellectual because I did not show total respect for orders from Moscow. And I've regarded them as insignificant because they seem not to have any true knowledge of the thinking of Marx. They may have read the 1848 manifesto, and that was all. I broke with them completely after the Moscow trials, not in favor of Trotsky, For the Kronstadt sailors and the Makhno government seemed to me to have been truly revolutionary, and I could not pardon their suppression. But I broke them because I could not believe that Lenin's great companions were traitors or anti-revolutionaries. As I saw it, their condemnation was simply another manifestation of the cold monster. I also saw with no great difficulty that there had been a transition from the dictatorship of the proletariat to a dictatorship over the proletariat. Oh, man. I can guarantee that anyone who is willing could see already in 1935 and 36 what would be denounced 20 years later, essentially the Moscow trial. So let's keep reading. It's just fantastic. So then he talks about how he is a Christian now. And he goes, hence, adherence to Christian faith is not in any sense a privilege in relation to other people, but an additional commission, a responsibility, a new work. We are not then to engage in proselytizing. And see, I just don't understand. How do you square that, man? How do you square that with the Great Commission? I don't know. Not that now that, and he's writing this in 1988, now that Christianity is no longer dominant in society, it is a stupid mania on the part of Christians to cling to this or that ideology and to abandon that which embarrasses them in Christianity. Thus, many Christians turned to Stalinistic communism after 1945. They emphasized whatever Christianity has to say about the poor, social justice, about the attempt to change society, but they neglected what they found uncomfortable, the proclamation and the sovereignty of God and the salvation through Jesus Christ. In the 70s, we saw the same tendency in the so-called liberation theologies. An extreme form of strategy has been found to make possible association with South American, primarily revolutionary movements. A poor person of any kind is supposedly identical with Jesus. Hence, there's no problem if you align yourself with Castro, for instance, or Evo Morales, or just anyone on the left. Daniel Ortega, Sandinistas. These orientations were broadly preceded by that of rationalistic Protestantism around 1900, with a simple presupposition that since science is always right and always has the truth, then in preserving the Bible and the gospel, we must abandon everything that is contrary to science and reason. For example, the possibility that God incarnated himself in a man along with the miracles of the resurrection. So the rationalistic Protestantism and its presupposition that science is always right and we must always look at reason. How do you square that circle with the fact or the idea that God incarnated himself in a man and thus rose from the dead? That's scientifically impossible, yet Christians believe that. Finally, in our own time, in 1988, we again find the same attitude of conciliation, of abandonment of one part of Christianity, but this time in favor of Islam. This is 1988. Christians passionately want understanding with Muslims, and so in conversations in which I have participated, they insist strongly on the points of agreement. For example, that both religions are monotheist and both religions are of the book. The Abrahamic principles, Abrahamic book. No reference is made to the main point of the conflict, though, which is that of Jesus Christ. Oh, man. And so this is just the beginning. I got more here. Let's keep going. All right. It's weird how he goes from Stalin to liberation theology to wanting an understanding with Islam, which is where we are now. And they feign adherence to a Jesus of resurrection, at least the rationalistic Protestants, but they say that can't be proven scientifically. And then with Muslims, they want a relationship with them, but Muslims do not believe, or Jews, that Jesus is the risen God. They don't, and that's even Paul says, you take away that Jesus as a risen God, there is no Christianity. Is all there is to it. That one act right there is all that matters. Christians, however, if they act properly and are not wicked, do not need to obey the political authorities, but should organize themselves in autonomous communities on the margin of society and government. Even more strictly and strangely, that extraordinary man, Christoph Blumhardt, formulated a consistently anarchist Christianity towards the end of the 19th century. A pastor and a theologian, he joined the extreme left, but would not enter into the debate about seizing power. At a Red Congress, he declared, "I am proud to stand before you as a man, And if politics cannot tolerate a human being as I am, then let politics be damned. This is the true essence of anarchism, to become a human being. But yes, but a politician, no. And so Blumhardt had to lead the party. In the middle of the 19th century, Blumhardt had been preceded on the anarchist path by Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, who would not let himself be ensnared in any power. He is despised and rejected today as an individualist. Never heard this guy, but I'm going to look him up. To be sure, he ruthlessly condemned the masses and all authorities, even though they be based on democracy. One of his phrases was that make no mistake, or crime is more horrible than to God than those committed by the power. That no mistake or crime is more horrible to God than those committed by the power. Why? Because what is official is impersonal, and being impersonal is the greatest insult that can be paid to a person. And I think with the mask, I mean, that is impersonal. If you ever you can't get more impersonal than covering your face, man. In many passages, Kierkegaard shows himself to be an anarchist, though naturally the term did not occur back then. Finally, Eller, and I forgot who this is, Bernard Eller. Finally, Eller's most convincing proof in my eyes is that Karl Barth, the greatest theologian of the 20th century, was an anarchist before he was a socialist, but favorable to communism, of which he repented. These simple facts show that my studies are not an exception to Christianity, that Christians can be anarchists, and just make no mistake. No mistake or crime is more horrible to God than those committed by power. Why? Because what is official is impersonal, and being impersonal is the greatest insult we can be paid to a human being. And again, this guy was later despised as an individualist. God wants an individual relationship with you, with me. A Christian God does. Jesus died not for the masses, he died for you specifically. All right, more to come on this guy. Man, what a great read so far. It is very liberating to me. It's exactly what I exactly. I was born and raised on the left, man. I've always had the underdogs in my mind. Always will, always have. I'm not a true right winger in the terms of no taxation or anything like that. I mean, you got to take care of the poor, and how you do that is through some sort of government taxation. There's no other way around that. Now, can you do it too much or actually hurting the poor? Absolutely, which is why the Republicans are more aligned with me. I mean, I think the welfare state has absolutely been devastating. Hold on a second. To poor people, particularly, and causing great carnage throughout society. And I think by design, frankly. But that doesn't mean I've abandoned my right-wing street cred that says I want government as small as possible, but I want some government to provide a safety net for sure. And I think Christianity allows for both these things, absolutely. But I also want to maximize the individual freedom as much as possible. And Christianity, I think, allows that for that too, especially when it comes to a personal relationship with Jesus. Anyway, more to come. All right, I'd love to hear your comments. Thanks now.